Harihi Om. Om Ganana Tva Ganapati Gum Havamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamashrabastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspatha Anashrunnal Nodibisida Om Mahaganapadaye Namaha. Om Prano Devi Saraswati Vaje Virvajinivati Vinama Mitrayavato Ganeshaya Namaha Saraswatyai Namaha Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Jnananandamayam devam nirmalarspatikakrudhim adharam sarvavidyanam ayagrivamupasmahe yasyadviradavakradhyaya parishatya parashatham Vignam Nignam Tisatatam Vishwashremam Tamashraye Gurud Brahma Gurud Vishnu Gurud Devo Maheshwaraha Gurud Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Gurave Sarvalokanam Visaje Bhavaroginaha Nidaye Sarva Vidyanam Sri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Sarveshwararpanamastu. Sarvopanishad Gavo Doktha Gopalanandanaha Ithihasas Puranancha Doktha Geethamrutat Mahate. Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Saishwararpanamastu. Niyadasharanam. Om Tat Sat, and welcome to the final week 11 of the journey into the secrets of the Puranas. It's been heaven of a journey, and it's revealed so much. When you think you know quite a bit, and then you do a bit of research and you realize, oh my God, what I know is not even a drop. And it's revealed that, constantly again and again through every single course that I've done with yourselves, right? The volume, it may seem so much in terms of information. It may seem voluminous in terms of the, amount of, details that have been shared about the different courses, particularly the 18 Puranas, because each Purana is a book in its own right. So for us to have come so far in the last 10 weeks, to have covered the 18 Mahapuranas or the Mukhya Puranas is a great, great journey. And I hope you have enjoyed it as much as I have. So what we're going to do today is, I'm just going to go over some of the stuff that I have talked about in the last 10 weeks, and to give you like an overall summary of each of the Puranas, like I did in the first week. And then, we'll move to questions from yourselves. Just before that, I'll talk to you about the those of you interested in writing and sharing your thoughts on the certificate. So, if you want a certificate, so whether it's a merit certificate or a distinction, so what you write, your thought process will determine what you will get. So Puranas basically means old, dated, right? Historical. Just like Ithihasas, Ithihasam, this is what it was then. This is how it was then. Itihi Hasam, So it is not something that has been made up. This is what happened then. This is how it was then. That is Ithihasas. And of course, the Puranas are exactly the same thing. It's a vast genre of Indian literature about a wide range of topics, right? About legends, about traditional law, about pilgrimages, yatras, and of course, I did 3 sessions before I started the Puranas. One was Yantra, Mantra, and Tantra. The other was Chakras. And of course, the other one was Panchakoshas. And all of these were covered in the various weeks that we looked at the different Puranas. And of course, some of the Puranas also touch on other subsequent, extensions of Hinduism, like Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, and also 2 of the other major religions, which is Christianity and Islam. Especially when I did Bhavishya Purana with you, I told you these have already been, right, pre-told that this will happen at this point in time. That's how sharp the science of prediction was back in the days. I mean, it still is, if you can, manage to look at, from a Shruti, Shravanam perspective and a Smriti, right? Nityanavasanam perspective, then you should be fine. So we looked at, some of the general background that I gave you in the first week. I want to repeat again and reiterate and reaffirm so that, once again, you're reminded of the distinction between primary sources of information and secondary sources of information, and information which is reliable as opposed to information which is unreliable, right? So whatever you see on TV or you hear on the internet, unless you do your own research, you will never be able to confirm whether what you hear or what you see is truth. So don't follow the story, right? Create your own. Create your own. By that, I mean, do your research and, of course, confirm, verify that this is how it happened or this is what happened. If you just follow people blindly, and you may not have the depth of understanding that is required for you to move consciously from one level to another level, and then from that level to another level, right? So you will remain hovering in the same space of time and space. You see, every Purana talks about something. Every Purana has got a central character who tells a story, right? And that's crucial. And what we need to do is take the lesson from that story and not be so much focused on the story. So even if you take the avatars, the Dashavatars from, Vishnu, every avatar has a reason why it came. And Krishna summed it up beautifully. He says, whenever there is an unrighteousness, I will incarnate from age days. Sambhavami vege. So there's very clear understanding of, the distinction between what is acceptable, that is right conduct or righteousness, as opposed to what is not acceptable, unrighteousness or unrighteous conduct. You see, if God can say, in the form of, the energy called Krishna or Rama or whatever, whenever there is righteousness, I will take it upon myself to come down and solve the problem or sort the problem out or sort the issue out. That means how much significant should we take that lesson and focus on, righteousness or right conduct. Right conduct doesn't just mean a behavioral thing, right? Right conduct means right thinking, right outlook, right vision, right, discrimination in listening, right discrimination in speaking, right discrimination in feeling, and right discrimination in doing. That is righteous conduct. You cannot think bad, say bad, and then do a little bit of good. So it has to be completely in harmony, in alignment. As I always say, Trayi Karana Suddhi has to be there, right? Otherwise, all the trainings, all the knowledge will not come to your aid when you need it. A classic example is, of course, Arjuna, isn't it? How many years and years of training to fight as a warrior? constantly being told whenever there is unrighteousness, you should fight it. That is the duty, primary duty of the Kshatriya, right? He went to camp, he learnt the art from, the two great masters that he had, that is Dronacharya and of course Bhismacharya, Pitamaha. And what happens when he goes to the battlefield? He's unable. He's unable to latch on to his skills to fight the war because he saw everybody on the other side not as enemies who are on the path of unrighteousness, but he saw them as, oh, my uncle, my cousins, my brothers, my teacher, my great mama. That is attachment. So the point is, if you have attachment, it will definitely get in the way of your spiritual progress. Nitsanga. So you have to detach. Attachment you can't help. You will get attached, right? But the trick is to evolve spiritually, to detach. Satsangatvam nitsangatve. Nitsangatvam nirmohatve. Nirmoha. Moha is desire. So you detach yourself from all the desires. And one of the key desires is the attachment desire. Whatever it is, whether it's an attachment to a person, a property, a thing, an object, that you have to detach. That means whatever you do not want the fruits. That is detachment. Completely. Sarvam Krishnarpanam, Sarvam Shivarpanam, Sarvam Brahmarpanam. Right? Once you surrender the fruits, then it's no longer yours. Right? And we have had so many lessons about this attachment, isn't it? Or your own attachment to many things. You can relate to this in your own respective lives. Right? Dhritarashtra had attachment. Duryodhana had attachment. Dronacharya had attachment, all to their own kith and kin, to their own families. And of course, some of them were very selfish. Right? Attachment, when I did Bhaja Govindam, I made it very clear. Attachment only causes sorrow. Attachment does not give you joy. Right? If it gives you joy, it is extremely temporary. It is a brief sojourn between two sorrows. Understand that. And then, of course, the moment you have attachment, it clouds your sense of discrimination and righteous actions. You must have been in some situations where, you're so attached to the person, and then you can't give the right sort of judgment. That's what I mean. It clouds your sense of discrimination. So you make the wrong decision, and that wrong decision causes misery, human misery. And that's why the Gita, when I did Bhagavad Gita with you, I said the Gita teaches you how to live in this world without being touched by sorrow. Without being touched by sorrow. So go back to the YouTube and watch the Gita. Perhaps what you should do is engage in a discipline where you are going back and looking at all these courses. I mean, they don't last more than an hour or so. So you can go through all these things and remind yourself, we cannot avoid possession, we cannot avoid action, right? But we can always choose between doing, good actions or choosing not to do them, right? Good equals joy, bad equals sorrow. Good equals good results, bad equals bad results. And that is the basis of the law of karma. And again, I've spoken about this when I spoke about karma. Remember, in this world, there is nothing permanent. Whatever you get, whatever you gain, whatever is gifted to you, everything is temporary. So have that mindset where you say, this is not mine. This is not mine to keep forever and ever. Therefore, I'm happy to give it away. Once you get into that mindset, into that sort of thinking, then you will have lesser and lesser sorrows. That's one way, right? Because possession causes attachment. Attachment causes sorrow. Sorrow causes grief. Simple as that, right? And of course, now at the moment, I'm covering in my Thursday reflection series, I'm covering the Ashtadoshas, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha was 2 days ago, then Mada, Mamada, Machira, Amkara. So you will see this is also things that can cause you sorrow, depression, greed, jealousy, anger, ego. So all possessions and all characteristics like the Ashtadoshas will always taint you with sorrow. Right? All the rishis have told us, do not grieve over those who come and those who depart from your life. Do not grieve over objects that you get or objects that you lose in life. Do not grieve about situations in life because they too come and go. But you should verily continue your journey without being affected by these. That is the real nature. The real nature is not you as the body or you as the mind. The real nature is consciousness. And when you start living in that consciousness, consciously, then that will give you unconditional happiness. And unconditional happiness is bliss. There is a difference between happiness, contentment, and bliss. Those are the three levels, right? Happiness is at one level, right? Contentment is at another level, but bliss is the ultimate level. So remember these, right? And many of the stories that I've said to you through the Puranas, and certainly through the other courses that I've done, if you are completely and emotionally dependent, then that is actually ignorance, because your sense of security, your sense of peace, your sense of happiness does not depend on any external things. It depends on internal things. And internal, I mean only two things that can give you this security or peace or happiness or joy or even bliss. Those two things are manas and indriyas, senses, mind and senses. The moment you control this, finish. Finish. And remember, when I did Bhagavad Gita, I said to you, what is the significance of Krishna holding the reins from the 5 horses? And slightly tilting his head back, looking at Arjuna. And I explained to you what are the 5 horses. What are the reins coming from the horses into Krishna's hand? What is Krishna? What is Arjuna? What is the chariot? What are the 4 wheels? The flag. Hanuman on the flag. 2 completely different yugas. Right? One is Treta Yuga, one is Dwapara Yuga. And I explained all of that to you. Go back and see. What you need is internal focus. You sharpen your mind and you sharpen your senses. Then everything external becomes controlled by that internal consistency. If internally you are inconsistent, then externally you will be completely imbalanced, right? So learn this knowledge of your own true self and repeat your, affirm, make these daily affirmations that I am not permanent. I am here temporarily. So why am I getting attached to things, to people, to, all kinds of issues? Just like a surgeon has to cut in order to heal, right? Like when a person goes through cardiothoracic surgery, it's a battle between life and death. But that has to be done in order to save you. So likewise, if you think, you have too many problems in life, that is God's way of making you strong. When you go and buy a car, for example, right? Some of the things that you want to know is how safe is this car? Especially you want to know something about its impact. If it knocks into something or other cars knock into it, then how safe are you? So the car is put through rigorous tests. Things thrown at it, things crashing into it, the car crashing into things, and then they, assess the impact. And then they'll know what is wrong, and then they'll improve to a certain level where they are satisfied that it is safe and sound. Then they sell the car using those things as, marketing promotions. God gives you the same thing, gives you problems to make you better, to make you stronger, to make you more sound in your thinking, right? So the first thing you need to do, and that's the lesson that flows from the Puranas, right, is to become free of this, become free of attachment. Right? Then you engender right understanding. The teachings of the Puranas takes you from wherever you are, right, to gradually and systematically to a state of freedom. But you must do the right thing for yourself, right? And the Puranas is not just some story, old story. It's not. It's been mentioned in the Vedas. Like I think I mentioned to you in week 1. The Atharvana Veda refers to the Puranas in many parts. The Rig Veda also refers to it. In fact, different parts of the Puranas refer to the Puranas as being the 5th Veda, right? Especially if you look at Srimad Bhagavatam, where it clearly says, Rik Yajuru Samavakya, Vedas Chatpara Udrataha, Ithihasa Puranancha Panchamo Veda Uchyate. And basically, it's telling the 4 divisions of the original sources of knowledge, known as Rik, Yajur, Sama, and Atharvana, right, are known as the 4 Vedas. But verily, it is accepted that the Ithihasas and the Purana is the 5th Veda. Panchamo Veda Uchyate, right? The Chandogya Upanishad, when I did, all the Upanishads with you, I think 15 Upanishads I covered, that also says, Chandogya Upanishad, I remember telling you, or refers to the Ithihasas and Puranas as the 5th Vedas. Now, it is not a mere story because it has to have several characteristics. And I think I mentioned this to you. It is called the Panchalakshanaha. The Panchalakshanaha is what gives the Puranas the identity it has. So every Purana must have a Sarga. Every Purana must have a Pratisarga. Every Purana must have a Vamsa. Every Purana must have a Manvantara, and every Purana must have Vamsa Charitram. Right? This means, the cosmology, the cosmogony, the genealogy, the cosmic cycles, Manvantara, and of course, Vamsa Charitra means, stories of the dynasties and the kings from the Surya Vamsa and the Chandra Vamsa, right? Some have come from the Surya Vamsa, some have come from the Chandra Vamsa. So, and of course, if you have the Upapuranas, then they also will have several characteristics, but they are called the Upapuranas, or the subdivisions of the major Puranas, the Mukhya Puranas, right? So that they are not mere stories. They are verily, truths. And that is why this whole course has been entitled very aptly, Secrets of the Puranas. Right? Because if you venture into it and you know the secret, then hey, nothing is there to stop you, right? So what have we examined so far? We looked at the Vishnu Purana and the Narada Purana in week 2, and then week 3 we looked at the Padma Purana and the Garuda Purana, and then week 4 we looked at Varaha and Bhagavata Purana. Then we looked at Matsya Purana and Kurma Purana, then Linga Purana and Shiva Purana, then Skanda Purana and Agni Purana, then Brahmanda Purana and Brahma Vaivarta Purana, then Markandeya Purana, very important one, and Bhavishya Purana, looking ahead in the future. And last week, we finished the last 2, called Vamana Purana and Brahma Purana. We have covered a lot in this last 10 weeks, right? And today, it's a summary, just taking you through different things that we have covered. So what did we look at in each of these Puranas? In week 2, we looked at Vishnu Purana and Narada Purana. And I was telling you how many verses. So today, just to remind you, right, the Vishnu Purana, right, has about 23,000 verses. And I told you how much is remaining now and what caused that dissipation or the, dissolution of the original sources of information. And Vishnu Purana, it talks about various dynasties. Of course, it talks about Vishnuism or Vaishnavism. It also, spoke about, the Buddhism and Jainism as coming out of Hinduism. But the main focus was on Mahavishnu and all his, leelas, so to speak. The Narada Purana and I said to you, it's also known as Naradhya Purana, right? And that has similarly about 25,000 verses. Narada Purana is very important because in Narada Purana, I told you, it refers to the 17 other Mahapuranas. So it gives credence and credibility to the existence of these almanacs, right? It talks about many things, amongst which are the yatras or the tirthastalas, right? That means all the important places of pilgrimage. It also talks about, because it's Narada Purana, and he's talking about all the things that can lend man a hand to move him, right? From a state of, spiritual inertia to a state of spiritual consciousness. So he talks about the three murtis. He talks about Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and he talks about the three Devis, and also Rama, Radha, Rukmani, and that sort of thing. It talks about astronomy. It talks about social philosophy. So Narada Purana is quite a good, complete summary of all the other Puranas, if you like that, right? Week 3, we venture into Padma Purana and Garuda Purana. Padma Purana is quite large, about 55,000 words. Again, it talks about the cosmology of the world, and Padma means lotus, and lotus basically refers to Vishnu and Lakshmi. It discussed, many things, amongst which are festivals, legends, the geography of the rivers and the regions, and of course, the various avatars of Vishnu, right? And I also mentioned to you that the North Indian manuscript of Padma Purana is quite distinct from the South Indian versions, although there are some similarities and overlaps, right? It's a detailed treatise on travel and pilgrimage centers in India as well. And most of these Puranas, when they refer to these Tirtha Stalas or Yatra Stalas, it is more or less the same, right? Garuda Purana, what a fantastic Purana this is, less than 20,000 verses, but it's an encyclopedia of diverse topics. And one of the most, revealing thing that I found when I did research on this Garuda Purana is, it tells you for every single sin you commit, what type of a punishment awaits you. And the punishment itself reads, they're quite gory. And I think the idea is to put you in a state of awareness that, you already know if these are the sins that you commit, right? And you commit sins knowingly, right? You commit sins knowingly. Nobody does it unknowingly, that, what I'm doing is, I don't know what I'm doing. So even if I'm doing something wrong, I don't know. So I can't know. Whatever you do, by virtue of the fact that you have done it with or without intent, it's a secondary issue. The fact that you have done it, it accrues karmic consequences. Very simple. So you do a thing, you get karmic consequences. If it's a good thing, you get good karma. If it's a bad thing, you get bad karma. There is no other explanation. And that also applies to thoughts and speech. So it's just like before the contest, the chief umpire or the chief referee will come and tell you all the rules. Now, once you're told the rules, you have to abide by them. You have to comply. Otherwise, you're out. So in the same way, man is being told in so many different ways how to live righteously in this Bhuloka, so that he does not accrue a next life, so that he dissipates his karmic consequences, or at least in this life, or if not the next one. But we keep building, and that's a problem. So Garuda Purana, from that perspective, it talks about astronomy, it talks about Vastu, it talks about Dhana and Dharma. So it talks about many things. It also talks about Ayurveda, right? And then it talks about the practice of yoga or dhyana, right? And 2 types it focus. I think I told you Samyak, right? Sankhya and Advaita. So 2 types of. And it also, I think I mentioned something about continuing professional development. Right? Fantastic, because Garuda Purana is talking about personal development, right? Which is, of course, is packaged in a modern way, as a continuing professional development thing. In week 4, we looked at Varaha in Bhagavata Purana. Varaha, of course, I think I told you the story behind, the Varaha avatar, right? Again, it's all the avatars that have come have a primary focus on Lord Vishnu and why he has taken that avatar and what was the purpose of, reinstalling or reinstilling that dharmic thing. This, despite it being called Varaha, it focused on, also on Shiva and Parvati, apart from, Krishna, Vasudeva, and so on and so forth. 24,000 verses, thereabouts. Bhagavata Purana is, of course, one of the main tenets of Vaishnavism, where it talks about the Bhakti Marga or Bhakti movement and how that can help the Vaishnavites improve in their knowledge, understanding, and practical application of what is taught there. It's about 18,000 verses. But just because it speaks of Vaishnavism and the path of Vaishnavism, it doesn't mean that, other paths are not there. There's many paths. Choose your path. But the destination is the same, It's just the time taken and the route taken is different. You can walk, you can cycle, you can ride a motorcycle, you can bus it, you can Uber it, you can drive it, or you can fly. Destination is one. Time, route, everything is different, isn't it? Then in week 5, we went to Matsya Avataram and Kurma Avataram, right? By looking at the Matsya Purana and the Kurma Purana. Matsya, probably less than 15,000 verses, right? Again, it covers diverse topics. It talks about Matsya, the first avatar of Lord Vishnu in the lineage of the Dashavataram. And I remember telling you the connection between the Dashavataram from Matsya Avatar onwards to Darwin's theory of evolution. And I say, look at the science here, right? Remember, I said Darwin's theory postulates that the first ever form of life was found in water called amoeba, right? It was purely water-based. And Matsya as the first avatar, purely water-based. Then, the theory of evolution from water to water and land, Kurma avatar. Then land only, Varaha avatar. Then from animal, beast to man. So man and beast, Narasimha avatar, fourth avatar. Then the dwarf, Vamana avatar. Right? Last week I spoke about Vamana avatar and King Bali. Then the imperfect man, the perfect imperfect man, which is Parasurama. Then the man who was perfect in every way, Rama. Right? Man who did not know he was God. Again, you want to go back to the Ramayanas, the 7 Kandas, you will know. Right? Everybody, you and I know Rama as the 7th avatar. But Rama himself did not know. Right? So many people judge Rama on the fact of their own knowledge. Right? Not on the fact of Rama's knowledge. Right? It's called subjective assessment. Right? So you need to engage in the subjective assessment. So Matsya Avatar and Kurma, speaks about the legends of Vishnu and of course the connection between Vishnu and Shiva when it comes to reinstalling dharma. Right? Matsya, I said to you about, is less than 15,000, 14,000 plus, and Kurma Avatar is about 17,000. Right? Week 6 was very, very good because we focused on Linga Purana and Shiva Purana. And Linga Purana, I specifically discussed the Shiva Linga with you, the symbol of Shiva and the Andha, the shape of the Shiva Linga. And I spoke to you about the origin of the universe and how it connects to Saivism. And I told you the problem, between Vishnu and Brahma, wanting to know who is bigger than the other. And I told you the Jyotir Linga story, right? God as light. And of course, that is one of the stories why Vishnu took the Varaha avatar. Right? One is, of course, he saved Bhumi Devi from the depths of the ocean. The other is he became the wild boar, and he dig, and he touched Shiva's feet, and Shiva bent to bless him, and that's when he took the flower from his head or touched his head. And I also told you that that's the reason why Brahma is not worshipped, because the lesson to man is, if you lie, it is not tolerated. Even if you're a god, there will be repercussions. And the repercussion is Brahma is never worshipped in any temple as a result of him trying to lie to Lord Shiva. Then, of course, we look at the Shiva Purana, which is a big thing in South India. Two Puranas are treated as the greatest source of knowledge. One is Shiva Puranam, or Shiva Purana, and the other is Skanda Puranam, Skanda Purana. Right? These two are very, very widely used, read, and spoken about in South India, and of course in other countries like Sri Lanka and Mauritius and all these places. So the Linga Purana had about 11,000 verses, and the Shiva Purana had about 24,000 verses. The Shiva Purana, of course, talks about Shiva, and it talks about what knowing the Shiva Purana, what it can do to take you from the cycle of birth and death, to cut that cycle and to be, birth free. If you're birth free or death free, so, right? And in week 7, we look at Skanda Purana and Agni Purana. Again, Skanda Purana is the longest Purana, an extraordinarily meticulous pilgrimage guide. This one, it describes Skanda, or Kartikeya, son of Shiva, and it contains many, many legends, parables, hymns, stories on how good initially suffers, but at the end, good always reigns, prevails, right? Then we looked at Agni Purana. Again, a solid Purana that talks about geography, that talks about Vastu Shastra, that talks about gemology, that talks about, grammar, matrix, maths, rituals, numerous other topics, just over 16,000 verses. It also talks about the geography, specifically of Mithila. Then we looked at Brahmanda Purana in week 8 and Brahmavaivarta Purana in week 8 as well. Brahmanda Purana had about 12,000 odd verses, and the most central focus of the Brahmanda Purana was the focus on Lalita Sahasranama. Lalita Sahasranama is Devi, Shakti, and Sahasra is 1,000, Nama is name. So it focuses on names. And the other thing that the Brahmanda Purana does is it looked at codes, CODES, codes of governance, codes of administration, codes of diplomacy, right? And I also told you that some of the almanacs of this Brahmanda Purana was found in Bali, when they were digging. Under, they found, statues and evidence of the Brahmanda Purana. Brahmavaivarta Purana was around 12,000 odd verses. No, not 12,000, I think 18,000 verses. And again, this was related by Savarni Maharishi to Narada Maharishi, who then, went and spoke about it in the Naimisharanya forest. Right? The Naimisharanya forest is the forest of learning. All the rishis went and done some tapasya. Right? They sort of grew from a normal rishi to a great rishi to a Maharishi to a Brahma rishi, like that. Right? So the Brahma Vaivarta centers around or focuses on two things, Radha, Krishna, and Shiva, Parvati. And it focuses on the Saptatirthas, Ganga, Yamuna, Godavari, Saraswati, Narmada, Sindhu, Kaveri, 7 holy rivers, Saptatirthas. And then, of course, in week 9, we looked at Markandeya and Bhavishya. Markandeya, I said to you, is very important because it talks about Devi Mahatmyam, Shaktiism, right? And I told you the story of this Devi Mahatmyam. It's all about, and I showed you the book, Devi Mahatmyam book. And I think I also asked Broji to send you all a reading material on Devi Mahatmyam. So I hope you've read that. That is Markandeya Purana. Markandeya, of course, I told you the story of Markandeya, who was saved from the clutches of Yama, the god of death, by Lord Shiva himself. So if the depth and purity of your devotion is unconditional and unquestionable, then the Lord himself will come and save you from the clutches of death. Right? Even if he has to do battle with the god of death, which is Yama, which is what happened in Markandeya Purana. Bhavishya means future. Bhavishya, right? You don't know what is going to happen, so you are just predicting, right? In less than 15,000 words, this is one of the 18 major works, Mukhya Puranas, quite significant because it talks about everything that is going to happen, prophecy, if you like. So Bhavishya Purana is a Purana based on prophecies, and some of it, of course, as we know, has come through, isn't it? Like what it said about the other religions that are coming into the fore. Then, of course, last week we completed the last two by looking at Vamana, just 10,000 words, and I told you about the story of Vamana Avatar, Bali, all of that, who is Bali, and how he relates to the fourth avatar, which is Narasimha Avatar, right? Hiranyakashipu's grandson is Bali, great-grandson. Then, finally, the Brahma Purana, in about 10,000 words, I have said to you, it's called the Adi Purana because it is listed amongst the other Puranas as the first among the equals, right? So it is seen as the first Purana in the list of the 18 Puranas. And it talks about many things, including the two Ithihasas, Mahabharata and Ramayana. It also talks about the architectural significance of temples, what you find where in the temples and what it represents or it relates to. So temples are not just built on some architectural whimsical fancy, right? Temples are built on pure science and Vastu Sastra, right? So Brahma Purana talks about that. And that is all the 18 Puranas, It's amazing to know that we have covered such a lot in such a short time, right? And I think in the first week, I also told you about some great people of past, great eminent personalities who have, spoken about the relevance of Puranas, right? One of them was Gandhi, where he says, I call myself a Sanatani. This is what Gandhi said, because I believe in the Vedas, the Upanishads, and particularly the Puranas, which tells you why things happen and the way in which they happen. That's Gandhi, right? And then Mark Twain has also said that, the Puranas are often seen as fantastical tales, but what you should see is beyond those tales to get the secrets of the deeper truth. Einstein said, my entire respect goes to the study of the Puranas, because only through the study of the Puranas, my reverence and my faith in the Hindu scriptures have grown tremendously. That is Albert Einstein. Okay? So if we accept all the theories postulated by Einstein, then we should also accept this, isn't it? Because it's the same man saying it, right? And he's used many of this that he's found in the Puranas and in the Ithihasas and in the Upanishads. He's used it in his scientific research. Leo Tolstoy says there is only one real knowledge, and that is the knowledge that comes through the Puranas. Tagore said, Rabindranath Tagore said, where knowledge is free, you will find the Puranas in existence. Abraham Lincoln studied, if you read his lifetime, his biography, he studied the Garuda Purana. I mean, how great is that? And he says, no one gives you joy or sorrow. We gather the consequences of our own deeds, be it by thoughts, be it by words, or be it by actions. Abraham Lincoln, on quoting the Garuda Purana, which he studied when he was in office. How great is that? Vivekananda said, the secret of Karma Yoga is to perform any action without any fruitive desires can be traced back to the Puranas. So Puranas are telling you, don't perform actions expecting some fruits. The very essence of the Gita. Do your deed. Don't expect the fruits. Surrender. Right? So I gave quite a few quotes about this. Even what the great one I remember is what Sri Paramahamsa Yogananda said. I just, because it really strikes a really poignant point here, very profound. If you remember, I'll tell you what I said then. Yogananda Paramahamsa, he said, in shallow men, the fish of little thoughts cause so much of commotion. In oceanic minds, the whales of inspiration make hardly a ruffle. Oh, fantastically profound is that. Paramahamsa Yogananda. And he said, this is the teaching of the Puranas. The Puranas teach you, in shallow men, the fish of little thoughts make so much of commotion. Yet in oceanic minds, the whales of inspiration make hardly a ruffle. Swami has also said, Puranas is your first teacher. Teaches you how to live righteously. Teaches you how to think, speak, and act righteously. And then it's your choice. But my own take, what I say to you about the Puranas is, it is that, Puranas is that which churns your thinking, churns it to get the negative out and leave the positive within, so that you can live your life using that positive to evolve to higher states of consciousness. That is my own definition, right? So now that you have digested, you have digested this drink, you need to look into your own learning and see how you will use this knowledge, right? Because maybe in a few weeks, I'll come up with another course, all, with divine will and grace. And after that, another course. But, what have you got through all this participation? You spend time, effort, getting all this knowledge, getting all this information. Question is, have you developed, have you evolved from where you were to where you are, and from where you are to where you want to be, right? So you need to explore your own learning throughout these weeks, as far as the Puranas is concerned, right? I mean, you do that with all the other courses. And I've always said, information without transformation is futile. You've just wasted your time and effort. You need to audit yourselves. Self-audit, personal audit. Yeah, that is what is very important. And if you have that, then it's not a problem. You have done what you're supposed to do, right? If you don't do that, then you have to ask yourself, what is my mission here? What is my aim? What is my objective? What is my goal here? So, it remains for me to thank you for joining hands with me and joining me weekly on this journey. And, with divine grace, we'll be in touch to tell you, what we're going to do next and next and next. As I usually say, Anyada Sharanam Nasti, stay blessed.